When you become a linguist, is it through the classes that you guys get super involved with the culture, or is that just a byproduct of learning the language? Like you just inherently become more interested in everything that's going around with it.
Both, right? I think naturally you're going to get like inclined to learn more, but it is also it's something that is taught because they want you to understand certain times of the year, right? They might be talking about specific holidays, or you might understand that this is their like Ramadan and this is what they're going to be doing. So you get it, you ingest it a little bit at DLI. Um, and then person to person, you become more interested in the culture. So you have all Iranian teachers, so when they are talking to you, they're talking from their own real world perspective. When I was in Iran, this is what my life was, and this is what we did. So, and then I enjoyed my teachers. So to invest myself in the teachers as well, I wanted to know more. So culturally, that's kind of how it works. And then when you're out of DLI, like I don't know, it's kind of more on you.
So let's backtrack just a little bit. Let's
Sure.
let's talk about what DLI is and kind of the regimen that is needed to get through a course like that. Just from the beginning, like day one, you showed up at DLI. Like, what was it like?
Uh, so DLI, Defense Language Institute, they're teaching you language, culture, etc. You could be there from anywhere from 32 weeks to 64, just in class. So it could be longer that you're actually there. But for me, so I was told what language I was going to be in basic training. I had the opportunity to pick five. Farsi was the last one on my list because I had heard of it before. Um, and so, whatever, I got selected for it. I didn't really know what to expect. So, day one, I show up, no idea what's going on. So, I'm going to college, basically, is what it feels like, just with a lot more oversight. Um, so I waited.
Formations and getting slapped up and like doing the whole
Y-
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, just terrible. And I had a buzzed head with now my new receding hairline. So I was like, oh, excellent. Um, but I showed up. We had a couple, I know my class had a couple weeks to wait, or at least I did. So I was just waiting. And I was in whatever they call it, casual status. So what
What is
I
casual
did,
status? Just so you can explain that.
casual status, you are there as like free labor. So anything that needs to happen, if they need like the buildings cleaned, you're it. Um, so anything along those lines, right? You are free labor, literally like I said, cleaning, you're going to be on charge of quarters, which is like you are sitting at a desk waiting for people to like check in to the buildings and whatnot. All this nonsense. So when I wasn't doing all of that crap, I tried to talk to other other either linguists who had passed and they were in casual status waiting to leave, or people who failed out and they were in casual status waiting to get reclassed or retrained into a different job. Um, and I tried to find all the Farsis and ask, what can I do to try and help myself to prep? I couldn't do a whole lot. I just kind of listened to a lot of stuff. And then going to class for the first time, again, you're in total, like, not shock, but like everything is so new and you're kind of nervous to figure out what's going to happen, but they jumped straight into it. So there's no like waiting. There's no like 1 week of like, oh, we're going to talk about each other and like figure out who we are. No, it's day one, alphabet.
No way,
We're learning.
really.
Yeah, we're learning the alphabet. And you kind of learn the alphabet and how to spell and do all kinds of stuff for like weeks, weeks. So that's kind of how it starts.
Do you think so? I don't speak any other languages. I tried when I was at Goodfellow for an Intel tech school, right? So for anyone who doesn't know what tech school is, it's a technical school. You join the Air Force, specifically the Air Force. You join the Air Force, you get a rate or a specialty code, and then from the specialty code, you then go to school to learn how to do just that job. Once you get to your actual unit, then you can branch off and do a whole list of other things. But for the purpose of this, podcast and list of questioning, that's what that is. So when I got to tech school, I was like, hey, you know, being bilingual and trilingual seems like a very important skill. I'm going to start learning German. And so I assumed German with English being a Germanic language. I was like, oh, this will be super easy to pick up, right? I started having dreams in German. And then I went to go, yeah, it was super weird, dude. I went to
Dang.
go take my first test once I got to Goodfellow, like the Intel Fundies test. And instead of like reading A, B, C, D as like the multiple choice like words or
A,
whatever,
B, C, D.
yes, I started to like translate in my head as I was taking the test. And I failed the test. And I was like, oh, this isn't good. And every dream for the next like 2 weeks was just in German, like purely in German. I was like watching movies, like doing the whole thing. And so, yeah, as far as that goes, like, would you say it was easier after having learned a language, as a child, like learning English over a long, series of years, and then going to DLI and learning Farsi and starting with the alphabet? Like, did you already have a good background of language, I guess you could call it?
Hell no. Like, so I lived in Germany for a little while. So funny enough, like, you tried to learn it on your own. I went to actual school um, to try and learn German. And in Germany, per class, I was good at German. In reality, I can understand a good amount, terrible at speaking it. Most people just like stopped me and were like, let's just talk English. And I was like, you're no fun. Um, and I thought like, oh, well, maybe, I had learned German. I went to Italy as well. And within 2 weeks, same situation. I was like able to order food and ask basic questions and this. So I was like, oh, maybe I am good at this. But they have A, B, C, D, a couple of umlauts, and all this stuff. Farsi, totally different. You're writing right to left instead of left to right. It's all squiggles and dots and this and that. So it was all like brand new kind of stuff to me. Granted, the alphabet it's similar in size to English, um, but a lot of the letters have the same sound. So there's like four different Z's. I don't get it, but it's all based off of like Arabic and Arabic roots. So, you're pulling from a bunch of different kind of languages. Even like French is actually molded into Farsi.
I heard French
Um,
was extremely difficult to learn how to speak as a second language.
we, that's all I got for
Oui,
French.
oui.
And Les Incompetents from Home Alone.
Oh
Um,
yeah, good reference. That's a good, yeah. I
but
know omelette du fromage from, yeah, which is cheese omelet for anyone curious. It's from Dexter's Laboratory. Uh, I used to love that show, dude.
yeah, that was a funny show.
Yeah, man. So talk to me about your childhood.
I'm gonna like way condense my childhood because nothing was that super crazy. Like I had a loving mother, had a loving father. Sure, there's plenty of things that go involved, ups and downs. Um, had I was always the short kid. I was always the small, like the runt of the whole class. So my whole like childhood and even into college for a while was fighting for attention because I wasn't getting any attention being the short guy. Really, I was the overlooked person most of the time. So um, maybe that's where my debatable comedic talents come in. Um, and then the storytelling that you guys all love to make fun of me for, dude. The stuff I used to do for attention, I 100% should be dead for.
What
You
is an
know,
example, not to throw you off?
here's I was going to give you one example
Excellent, dude.
of me being in high school. And the funny thing is, the attention, I didn't need it from these people. Like my two best friends in high school, I already had their attention. Like
Yeah.
we're best friends. Um, but wintertime, we're taking one of our friends home. We dropped her off back at her house. As we're leaving, something that I used to do, incredibly stupid and dangerous, was jump on top of my friend's Ford Explorer while he would be driving down the road, like on the highways.
Uh,
So,
bro, what?
um, yeah, yeah, not smart. And the first time I did it, I was riding on the side, and I like, he turns onto the highway, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And I ended up kind of liking the thrill, but I did it a bunch of times until the last time, which was this time in the winter. They're like, you won't get up on top of the roof. And I was like, easy. I was like, let me pull over, let me do this. So they pull over, I jump on top. We get to the end of this housing development, and there's this big icy patch. So he pulls into the ice, starts doing donuts, and I'm on top. And my hands, right, I'm gripped on like this. And eventually I start going like this, and I am perpendicular to this vehicle. So the vehicle is this way, and I am hanging off like a flag from this vehicle, and I'm trying to yell to them like, "Stop, stop, like I'm going to fly off." They did not hear me. I flew off, understanding that like I'm gonna let myself go and pray that I don't get whacked by this car. Um, I let go, and by a miracle of God, I landed on my feet in a puddle, and um, and that was the last time I ever did it because I was kind of shaken at that point. So that was the kind of stuff I would do in high school. When I went to college, it was more just like, I bet I can drink more than you. And they're like, yeah, okay. Um, so like, you know, a bunch of people would kind of see me and be like, all right, yeah, you're wild and all of that. And then I would continue to drink with them, and they're like, how is this dude standing? Um, and like an example for college, had a gigantic party with this group of friends that kind of ended up seeing me that way. They were like, "Oh, you're the fun guy
He's
when
that guy. Yeah.
we drink." Um, so we went to their house. They had this thing called kegs and eggs. You wake up real early. It's St. Patrick's Day. You wake up super early. You go to people's houses, and from like 4 in the morning till after noon, you're basically just drinking. And then you go to bed, and then you wake up and you party again in the afternoon. um, so like I went up, it's 4 in the morning, we show up to this house, it's packed already. um, when I showed up, they're like, Belotti, you're manning the kitchen. So I was the keg guy for the kitchen, and a bunch of people like already kind of knew me, so it was like all fun and games. And then naturally, with like 50 people inside of a kitchen, there's only so much that I can do to pass out beer. And this kid comes up and he's like, hey man, we've been standing here for so long, blah blah blah. And he's like, me and my girlfriend, like, we need a beer. And I was like, oh dude, I'm so sorry, man, like, let me get your beer. So I fill up the girl's beer, and I'm like, here you go. Grab his beer, fill it up. And he's like, ah, thanks, man. He grabs the beer, and the moment he grabbed it, I smashed it out of his hand. And I was like, get out of my kitchen. Don't ever come to me and disrespect me like that in my house. And everybody started throwing all the beer at him. So this kid just got like basically dogged out of this house by a gremlin on top of a keg, you know? But like, that's the kind of stuff that like, I would do to like get attention and all that. And then, like I said, eventually, I ended up like meeting somebody, and that kind of settled me down a little bit because I was doing like again bare minimum in college and school, so GPA wasn't anywhere near great. But then the last year or so of college, I started to actually like apply myself, stay in a little bit more, do school. And then when I realized, I was like, dang, I can actually like do pretty decent at school. I should probably try to do that. Um, that's what I did. And then that took me to Germany because the girl that I had met was German. Worked for the entire summer, bought a one-way ticket, sent it. I moved there. Um, I remember almost passing out on the plane because I was so nervous. I had no idea what to expect, and I'm like, "What am I doing, dude?" So I was like in full panic mode. And then I spent 2.5 years there. Um, in those 2.5 years, I worked for um, AFES, which is like the exchange. It's a military post mall type of thing. Very quickly, like I did have half a brain, so like people saw that and they like wanted me to move up. So I moved up pretty quickly. Eventually I got a second job. That job was awesome. It was on an army airfield where I was like marshaling aircraft, loading aircraft and unloading aircraft using like forklifts and K loaders. So I was like qualified on 10K forklifts and this K loader, worked with a ton of different people. And that was my first real experience with like the military because I was unloading military aircraft. Um, and that was my first like iteration of thinking about joining the military. Um, bunch of stuff in between all of that. Decided I'm going to go home. I'm going to join the military because I started to get a new feeling that I had not had, which was a desire to actually learn. Like I wanted to go back to school or get a trade because I kind of felt like my life was strictly coming together because of my ability to be personable. That was all. So I was, I had my interview with AFES. The guy that interviewed me was like, "You seem cool. I would hang out with you." And he told me that afterwards. So he's like, "That's why I hired you." And then getting to know people at the job, that's how I got my second job. I knew somebody and they liked me. So my skill was strictly based off of how well I networked and communicated with people. And when I got to the job, I was in. So I would learn everything that I possibly could. And that ended up making me more important to these people. And so that desire to learn kind of translated to how can I get learning while getting paid or not having to pay for it out of my pocket. And I was like, all right, well, the military does seem like a good option after talking to a ton of different people. Um, and that's why I went home and I ended up working for a year. I was in the delayed entry program, just, hey, I'm ready. I sign up. These are the jobs that I want. I'm going to wait. And then you're in that delayed entry program until you're assigned a job. Um, and then
What year was this?
it was the end of 2013. I came home. 2014, I got involved. And then 2015, was when I joined. It was actually St. Patrick's Day. It was my first day in the military. Um,
That's a cool day to start.
yeah, it was pretty cool. Um, but yeah, the whole like recruiting thing, very interesting. Um, but basically, I got stuck with being an airborne linguist because my recruiter was like, these jobs ain't going to happen. Um, you can wait all you want, um, but it's going to be very rare. And he's like, have you ever thought about taking the D Lab, which is the Defense Language Aptitude Battery, the test to see if you can even become a linguist? Um, and so I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll take it. And I passed with the absolute minimum score. Um, and little did I know that meant I'm getting this guy in the military to my recruiter. Um, and he asked me like, do I want to do that? And I told him if I do that, I will only do airborne. And that meant you're going airborne linguist to him. Whereas I told him like, call me. This is not on my list right now. Call me. And then I will decide whether or not this is good or not. Um, had a extremely long conversation with my father that night. We went out to this bar and just started drinking. And I was like, I'm nervous. Like, I don't know if this is what I want to do. And he's like, he kind of just gave me some, relative words of encouragement, um, and said, like, just trust it. I think this will be good for you. So I did. Um, and then begin journey.
So at this
So,
point, just for the audience to chronologically flow with us, how old were you at this point? Because typically
oh,
people
it's true.
join when they're 18, 19 years old maybe, but
Yeah.
it sounds as if you know you got out of high school, went to college, graduated, moved to Germany, spent some time in Germany, and then went back home, as you explained. So, kind of talk
Hmm.
through like that mindset of having joined the military already being a full fledged adult with a job at that point, right?
Yeah. 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 And I would say half fledged adult. I was still very much in a young mindset. I did not like, I was not a full, like, mature adult. I just had some experience, right? Like, I did go to college, I did graduate, I did move to a different country on my own. I sustained myself in another country for years. And then I was 24 when I came home. 23? 23 or 24 when I came home. And I think by the time I joined, I was 25. So by the time I got to basic, I was 25. Um, so um, yeah, so that's kind of how that worked. And so I did have some experience at minimum. I wasn't this 18-year-old who maybe had one job or something basic. I worked a bunch of different jobs, um, and, had lived on my own. I understood like how to pay a bill and, get a phone under my own name and whatnot. So,
So, dude, when it comes to your experience at DLI, right? So, we've already talked about just like the school itself. Can you speak to how intense it really is? Because I think we've scratched the surface as far as the regimen of like, you wake up, you go to formation, you go to class, day one, you got to learn the alphabet, do the whole thing.
yeah.
But can you talk about how truly intense DLI actually is?
Yeah. uh, I mean, legitimately, one of one of the, if not the most difficult tech school. Um, you know, I'll just stick to the Air Force. but like as far as basic courses go, um, definitely one of the toughest. I mean, literally everybody, you are hanging by a thread. Every test is a gigantic hurdle. It's not like, I can biff this one and I can still make it up later. Like if you fail a test, yeah, you have another opportunity potentially to take it again, but you are I think what it did to me was create a sense of uncertainty. If I failed my entire Air Force career and what I joined for, meaning I wanted to become a linguist, out the window. It's all, you know, whatever the needs of the Air Force is at that point. So a lot of people, to include myself, felt a lot of pressure to perform. Um, and it got to a point for me, I was so nervous at my first test that the morning of my test, I woke up, went to formation, and I got so anxious and like anxiety ridden that I had to take a knee in formation and I didn't know what was going on. Um, Went inside, kind of drank some water, and I was like, I don't know, maybe I'm just dehydrated or something. Went to go, I told one of my buddies, I was like, I'm not feeling right. Can you please come to class with me? Like he was in my class, but just in a separate section. I was like, I need you to come to class, like, and be with me just in case something happens. I feel like I'm going to pass out. So he comes with me. We're on like the last bus to go up to the top of the top of DLI or whatever. And I started feeling like I was going to pass out again. And this one staff sergeant turns around. He's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "No." So he took me in, and I literally like went to the hospital. I was they were testing me, like checking out what could be possibly wrong. They couldn't tell me, and they're like, "Are you stressed out?" And I was like, "No, why would I be stressed out?" I was like, "Stress can't do this to you." And it literally took me out for an entire week. I could not I couldn't go to the dining facility without feeling like I was going to pass out, just being overwhelmed. Um, I ended up being told if you don't come to class the next Monday, so maybe this was like Friday or something like that, right? They're like, if you don't come to class on Monday, we're going to have to roll you back, meaning I'm going to have to go back to casual status, wait for an unknown amount of time to join another class. And that scared me even more. So I spoke to my lead instructor, and she was wonderful and was like, I'm telling you, you are going to do fine on this test. Me and you, I will issue the test. Me and you will take it, or you will take it, but I will be the only other person in the room. And she's like, I promise you, from what I've seen, you are going to be just fine. I took the test, did really well on it, and it lifted this big weight. I was like, holy crap, maybe I am getting this because I didn't feel like I was getting it. And I was like, maybe I am getting it. And she's like, just trust this process. So I started to do that. And I just trust the process throughout the entire time. But during my time, flies, dude, they're just getting taken out left and right. We didn't have too many failures in our class, but I do remember this one kid, hyper smart, like literally went to school for like nuclear physics or some nonsense like that. He was he even had like that arrogance about him because he was like so smart, and he
Oh,
was
he
the
knew he was a
first
dog. Yeah.
first one to get washed out. Um, because he just could not comprehend, like, I make my rules, like, or he would kind of say it like, you told me this as a rule. I took that as gospel. But you can't really do that with language because there's different tenses and all this other stuff. And some words come from Arabic, some words come from French, some words are Farsi, like originated or whatever. So, it comes to with all these different aspects of rules. So it totally jacked him up and he hated it. Like breaking down in class, really difficult. So, and honestly, like Farsi, of all of the like Middle Eastern languages, I feel, and maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like it's probably the easiest of them all. Um, so with that being said, like I was going through, we'll call it like a 6 out of 10 in the scale, whereas like you had Chinese and all these other Asian languages, which are they're 64 weeks because they need it. It's super, super intense. And the instructors, depending on the language, were very intense. So, like, we had, some instructors that were like, hey, calm down. It's all good. We're going to take some time. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to settle you down. Other instructors in other languages were like, if you don't get this, you're out. Dead face. We don't care. You're not keeping up. Get out. So, I am thankful for that because if it were the other case where somebody was like, get to this class, take this test now, and if you fail it, you're out. I probably would, maybe I would have failed. I don't know. Maybe I just would have been in my own head too much. And if I failed, then I am going back. And that probably would have, it probably would have wrecked my entire career so far. I don't know if I would have stayed in or continued to stay in. I'm, coming up on 10 years now. So the intensity is real.
Obviously, you're one of my very very few like best friends. So I think this will be really cool. Like when we like officially upload it and it's edited, and I get to like send it to you and all other stuff. Like you being part of what potentially is going to be the very first episode. So um, I think that's really cool. Like me personally, I think that's really cool. So I just
Me
wanted to take
too.
time like
Me
to say
too.
thank you. Yeah, man.
I'm so beyond like honored, and we've we as the collective group of friends, you know, now it's been so many years, right? But I think you could probably remember, and we all kind of still harp on it a little bit about like how wildly crazy, well, poorly said, but wildly crazy it was to watch you as somebody who was so much younger than a majority of us. um, Whenever you like wanted to go do something or you had that wild hair and you were like, I'm gonna go for it, that you always did. And like, you've talked about this podcast, you've talked about your um, personal development program, your exercise programs, all these things. And never did one of those things ever actually fall off. Maybe it took you a little bit longer to get there, but you always get, you always end up getting to it. So it's really exciting to be a part of that for you. And feels really good that you think that I would be somebody that would be worth having on, and talking about some experiences. So
Thanks, man. That's
thank you
awesome.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude, that's awesome. That's really cool. So, last question for you, man. What what's next? Show the
Um,
hat, dude.
And
Yeah,
I'm going to be that number one dad.
absolutely.
Here I am in the garage right now with uh,
Some
some
wood.
projects.
Yeah, as all dads do in the
Oh
garage with
yeah,
some projects.
for sure. So yeah, that's what's next for me. Is my next big thing on the horizon is becoming a dad. That is the one thing I think about every single day, and a majority of my day is thinking about literally everything that I do. and how would this either look to my child, or how can I try and teach my child something? How the hell do I burp this kid? I'm reading books on how to do that. Um, so that is my next big project, if you will, and my next big thing in my life. The Air Force is at least pretty supportive of families, so I'm hoping to, be able to take advantage of that. Um, but yeah, I mean, so my career has changed quite a bit. Now, I said I'm in Oklahoma now, and that's because the opportunity that I had to stay home um, and learn more, um, and be in charge of more things and start to be a project, like a manager, if you will. Um, it developed me into an instructor. Um, for my job, and that ended up leading to me coming to the actual formal schoolhouse. So now I am that teacher for people coming through this tech school, for the Airborne ISR tech school. So it's a really cool like transition to have made, and to be a part of too. It's really fun, getting to see who's coming into the military next, and who's going to be trying to fill the shoes of all the people who have, filtered out for, one reason or another. So
Absolutely. As an E6, everyone as
yeah,
well,
let's
potentially
hope.
and hopefully crossing our fingers that he will make E7 as well. Hey man,
Yeah,
I
God
really
willing.
appreciate having you on the podcast. I know we talked earlier. Dude, this has been a phenomenal experience and time. So um, if you got nothing else, dude, that's all I got for this one.
Yeah, man. Once again, I've said all my nice things to you, so now it's time to tell you.
No, I'm just kidding.
um, but yeah, no, this was super cool, and I'm super happy for you. I'm honored to be like, potentially that first guest that actually gets, put out into the world. Um, I'm always available for you. So whenever you want another podcast, call me up. I'll show you the next project that I'm working on.
Thanks, dude. Love you, man.
Love you too, dude.